Okay.
Now it is.
Now it is, all right.
So while we try to sort all this technology that apparently can't be sorted, let's try to settle our minds here. And of course, the easiest way to do that is to bring our awareness to this room. So the easiest way to do that is to bring our awareness to our body sitting here, the sensation of our body against the cushion or the chair. Really trying to leave the busyness of getting here, the planning for later, by just focusing on the sensation of the body sitting here. The temperature of the room on your skin. Perhaps the sound of the fan, the pressure against the legs. Then you can place your attention on the sensation of the breath going in and out at the tip of the nose. Now recall the reason you came this evening and try to generate a positive motivation and a positive intention to use your time well. And try to include the wish that if this be of benefit to your own state of mind, that it ripples out to benefit those around you. And again, return your attention to your body sitting here. Your awareness that there are others around you. And then gently bring your attention to the class. Hello. It looks very different when you're doing it this way, so I don't know how to find the first slide. Oh yes, this is my warning label. Once again, the warning label that this material, if you're not super familiar with the Buddhist teachings, and this is one of the first courses you've taken here, then the subject of samsara and nirvana, which contains how we get stuck in cyclic existence, can have a lot of information that seems discouraging. So we have to be brave and try to have a look at it with an open mind, a curious mind, and set our preconceived understanding of how things are in existence to just explore the Buddhist perspective on how things exist. So, all right, so this is samsara and nirvana. Did anybody have any questions about last week or the readings or anything? Did anybody do any readings? Probably not. So samsara is what?
The cycle.
Cyclic existence.
Like rebirth and death.
What's particular about it?
Suffering the cyclic existence.
That's not desirable.
It's not desirable. What? Okay. It's caused by the actions of our body, speech, and mind. So cyclic existence is actually our experience of it's the manifestation of our past actions. That we have this birth and death and rebirth and death and rebirth and death since beginningless time. And so its foundation is ignorance. And we talked a little bit about that. What is the ignorance that is the root of samsara?
Inherent existence.
It's believing that the phenomena exist inherently. So some people refer to this ignorance, it goes by many names. But fundamental confusion or fundamental ignorance or the root of samsara or just plain old ignorance or the view of the perishing aggregates. There just has lots of names. But it's how we view the world. So in this context, ignorance is more than just not knowing. It's an active misunderstanding of how phenomena exist. It is seeing things that exist and grasping at them as if they exist inherently. And so this is a big concept. It's a whole topic in another Discovering Buddhism in a few months. So it's, we don't have to go through the whole thing, but basically it's saying that we don't perceive reality as it actually is. And because of that, misunderstanding, our disturbing states of mind arise. Because this is all about how we view the self and what belongs to the self, so the me and mine, and how from this misunderstanding that we inherently exist, that becomes this basis for grasping after an exaggerated sense of self and an exaggerated sense of mind. So we protect me and mine. We consider friends those who are, that we like, that our family likes, that we feel like helps us. We consider our enemies those that hurt us or our family. Those, the mind part, my family, my friends, that kind of thing, my country. And so this course, Samsara Nirvana, is about understanding how we get stuck in this cycle of existence because of our ignorance and the disturbing emotions or the delusions that arise from that, and how we can get out, which getting out is what nirvana is. Nirvana is just liberation from cyclic existence. So you don't stop existing, but you stop existing within this framework of uncontrolled rebirth due to contaminated aggregates and causes and conditions, so our contaminated action. So what's karma?
Action.
Action, it's the Sanskrit word for action. So in this context, so what the Buddha said is we have this fundamental misunderstanding, this root of samsara, this ignorance, and from that our afflictions arise. Afflictions are just those states of mind that are influenced by this ignorance. So there's some that we, that are easy to see as disturbing, that when they arise in the mind, they make the mind very unpeaceful. What are examples of those?
Anger.
Anxiety.
Mm-hmm. But there are also afflictions that don't feel so terrible to us. We have to really look very deep to see the agitation in the mind. What are those? Excitement, attachment, desire, craving. Is it still working?
Dissatisfaction.
Dissatisfaction, but that's that's pretty much, we know that's disturbing. It's not extremely disturbing if it's just a slight irritation. But all of these states of mind, whether we think they feel good, like infatuation or desire or the anger and hatred, all of these actually are manifestations of an agitation, and then if we really get familiar, if we really look at our minds, if we get just accustomed to always kind of noticing what's going into our minds, then we'll start to notice, that sensation of attachment and desire and craving doesn't actually feel good. It signals of a lack of something. I want this. It means I don't have this. I want more of this. Means we're starting to worry about the next moment. We're not able to stay in whatever we're enjoying right now. We're moving on to going, how can I keep this happening again and again and again? So there's a certain sense of need and want and fear of losing, all of that, even within our chasing happiness. So when these states of mind arise, and they produce, the actual state of mind is an action, it's a mental action, and then that can be followed by actions of speech or body. So you roll your eyes at somebody, every action like this that's accompanying this kind of agitated state of mind, or actually any contaminated state of mind, places a seed, an imprint on our mental continuum. And this is just an analogy. Obviously, it's not actually a seed, It's not a physical seed, but it's a habit energy. You know, it puts down this little imprint in our mind stream, and which will ripen later if it meets certain conditions as either happiness or suffering. So what's the cause of suffering?
Ignorance.
Negative actions. Hatred, anger, attachment. Attachment is not the same as love. Attachment is the exaggeration of positive qualities in something that you desire. So it's mistaken because it's only focused on what you just, like about the object, and then exaggerates it. But states of mind like love, which is wishing others to be happy without attachment mixed in, so those brief moments you have with your children where you really just want them to be happy, before that attachment mixes in, going, and look good to me. So, those result in pleasant experiences. So positive states of mind result in positive experiences in the future, and negative states of mind result in unpleasant. And then neutral states of mind, we have bunches of those. And these are all making habits. Every single thought places a seed. Every single action places a seed. It doesn't mean that if you we often see things, but we really don't ascertain them. Like we can see this whole room, we look around, but we're not ascertaining, we're not really apprehending all the objects. It's more like we have sort of a snapshot of the whole room, but if we walk out and somebody asked us, what color were the cushions, or what color were this, or what was the wall color, or what was this, and what was that, we'd probably miss some, because we are actually not ascertaining them. So those kind of things, which really aren't, because of inattention, don't really place seeds, except maybe the habit of inattention. I don't know about that. I have to think about that. I don't know whether to go, we've had a Discovering Buddhism on Karma, and we talked about this last week. So can anybody remember these are the 4 types of the results of actions. So what are they? Feel free to read. So one karmic result, the seed that's placed in our mind stream, when it meets the appropriate conditions, can actually determine the type of rebirth we have. And this is called a ripened result or a fruitional result. The action itself in the past life is called a projecting, cause. So that's one type. And it takes a particular kind of power of the action to be able to actually result in a rebirth. Then we have results that are similar in habit. What are those?
I get confused with if you steal, then you get, in the future, you get the same. People will steal from you.
That's an experience. So you experience the results that you caused in the past. So if you stole from other people, then in a future life, people will steal from you. That's the result similar to the experience. Similar to the cause means...
Similar in habit?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Similar in habit.
That you
in next life exhibit similar habits.
Right, so you keep
Like
stealing.
You had propensity for stealing, or you were stealing, you will have this propensity.
You'll continue to steal. If you're not, that's the habit energy. So if you meet with, the kinds of conditions that you have practiced stealing in, you're likely to steal again because we just follow our habit energy.
But a good one too. Like if you're kind to people, people will be kind to you.
Yes. Patience is supposed to result in an attractive appearance. And attractive doesn't necessarily mean that other people find you physically attractive. It means that they like you. Like His Holiness walks in a room and it makes people smile. Maybe not the Chinese but government, but it's just this. The result is people find you appealing, which makes kind of sense. That patience would have that result. And people will also treat you patiently. So for some reason, when you call social services, they answer all your questions. They ask if you need any more help. They give you all the referrals you need. This is probably the result from practicing patience in a previous life. And then there's the environmental result, which is like where you're born. Is there food? Do the crops succeed? How's the air pollution? Are you in a war zone? Are you in, a safe place? That kind of thing. I've always lived in hot, humid places, and I hate humidity. Hate it. And so I'm just creating the cause to be born there again. Let's hope it's not one of those hot hells. So,
Oh God.
I'm really, so I had to really work on my mind, recognizing that my continual complaining of the heat and humidity is not serving me well. So
what kind of mental actions would you take to change that outcome in your next
quit
life?
complaining, to accept whatever is the temperature.
No, I like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
I actually
I love
like
it.
community, yeah.
That's what it's about accepting whatever, and this is true for all of our negative results, is that we go, oh, I'm responsible for this. I created the cause for this. So I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to just use this experience, I'm going to use the experience of living in Florida as a remedy, to this creating the cause to live in hot, humid conditions, but because I'm teaching here. So I'll see it as this great positive condition, and that I'm exhausting, and if I quit complaining, I will quit, creating the cause to have more moments in the hot, humid desire realm. Yeah.
Does it take, because what you're saying, I understand that it takes a certain level, and correct me, of understanding. But what happens with that example that you provided earlier about the person that steals? How is that person gonna break that cycle without the understanding?
He's not going to break the cycle without the understanding. That's the purpose of meeting the teachings. And not just these teachings, but say you're born into, several lifetimes later, you're born into a family where the parents really take great care to describe the harm of stealing. And so then when the urge to steal arises, you go, my parents wouldn't like that. They wouldn't approve. And so you resist it. That's how you transform your mind. It's not fate. It's not like you are predestined to steal again. It means to not steal, you're going to have to exert some effort because you have a habit of stealing. You might discover this, your parents might discover this as a child because you seem to take things out of the, drugstore candy counter or something when you're little, and they realize, we'll have to teach them not to do this, and this isn't the correct behavior. And why isn't it the correct behavior? So you don't know anything about Buddhism.
It's just not nice to take other people's stuff, man.
Because the people whose stuff you're taking are being harmed,
Absolutely.
you know? And you might have repercussions. You might get caught. You might go to jail when you're doing it at 18, you know, instead of 6. So,
Yeah, what part of the world you're in too, you could lose an arm for it.
yes. I mean, the consequences can, you know, are severe in many parts of the world, and going to jail anywhere in the world is not fun. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So every moment, no matter what conditions we're meeting, whatever's ripening right now, we have a choice. And so what the purpose of trying to really strongly develop self-awareness is to be able to put some distance between whatever's happening out here so that we can assess how we want to respond. So we can more skillfully respond. So we don't just follow our habit energy, you know. I mean, we all know this when we're doing something. It's the same thing when we're trying to break the habit of overeating or over drinking or whatever, not exercising, is that habit of, you know, starts to rise up and you have to argue with it. You know, you have to kind of go, no, wait a minute. That's not a good excuse not to go, go to exercise class. You know that you'll feel better if you go. You have to use all your reasoning to get you to go until you've got a new habit. But even then, it can be, you can lose it again, you know, if some other intervening condition comes along. You know, like you get sick and then you take a break and then you have to start over, which I do repeatedly in my life. So, does that make sense? Okay.
For me, it's easy to understand an action because let's say that I steal, to know that I steal, but that even what you're thinking, every little thought that I sometimes don't even know I'm having so many according to this.
Oh yeah, there's 65 in a finger
Exactly. So I'm like, I cannot see all those seeds. I'm
Right.
having them.
But yeah, so that's the kind of imprint. So you think about, you know, this little kid. I did this, so I know this. I know this from experience. You're a little kid, and you're walking to the grocery store, and you're thinking, "Ooh, they'll have this kind of chocolate bar," and you think, you know, and you have no money, and you just kind of go, and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about it. Every moment you're thinking about taking it, when you know it's not yours, you're placing a seed of stealing. I mean, it's a mental seed of wanting to have. This is what attachment does. You crave it, you exaggerate its qualities, and then you want to have it. So covetousness, which is the mind, you know, one of the main mental non-virtues, is exactly that mind, where you crave something and then you make a plan on how to get it. You know? So every moment of that action, you're placing these seeds in your thought process. It's not just the moment you actually do the action. That's when you complete the action. But then you probably continue on, either feel like in my case, being terrified and immediately going, wow, I wish I hadn't done that. And I've never eaten chocolate so fast. You know, and then having to go back later and paying for it because I couldn't stand it. You know, it was just horrible, you know. So, you know, but if you rejoice, if you think, oh, I got away with that, you know, all those things, then you're continuing to place deeper and deeper seeds that reinforce this habit that stealing is something I like. Yeah.
I'm just realizing that your, I don't know, love, for lack of a better word, of chocolate has been a habit you practiced since childhood.
Yeah. I brought it with me. You know? Now, it obviously didn't have to be chocolate,
Right.
you know, but this, you know, so it's interesting. And it's all a mixture, isn't it? Because eating chocolate to me is a pleasurable experience.
Right.
That's the result of virtue. Because chocolate doesn't have any deliciousness in it. It's from my side. So I find it pleasant. So here I'm exhausting my virtuous activities on chocolate. Oh well. Notice I'm not committing to stopping that, but you know. Okay.
No way.
It's craziness. This is my crazy mind. Okay. So nirvana is when we stop all that. Now we you know, in order to achieve freedom from cyclic existence, we've actually cut through our ignorance. We understand how phenomena actually exist to the point where we have what's called a direct realization of emptiness, emptiness being the absence of inherent existence, and that being the foundation for all our afflictions. They cannot arise again. So there's no more, you know, greed, craving, you know, contaminated love with, you know, attachment, all the stuff. There's none of those states of mind that cause us that disturbance, that sense of dissatisfaction, the sense of lack. You know. So when we actually have a direct perception of emptiness and we work with that state over a long period of time, we cut the root of samsara and we're liberated. And that means all those seeds we placed in all those gazillions and gazillions of thoughts since beginningless time and actions of speech and body no longer can produce a result. Because the only way to produce the result is to have the condition of ignorance be there. So you've completely cut it. Well, that takes a while. So to have this direct perception of emptiness. So in the meantime, we try to practice reducing our disturbing states of mind. So we try to cultivate love and compassion and reduce attachment and aversion, you know. And so when we're practicing love and we realize, ooh, I'm getting off track here because now it matters to me, like, you can't wear that out of the house kind of attitude towards your children, you know, you approach it from a different way. You now can say, you know, let's talk about what you've chosen to wear to school. Because your motivation is just about helping them be happy. And it's instead of harming your reputation about how you dress your kids. You know? So you either let it go because it's not going to harm them, or you know that perhaps this will give an impression they were not intending. So you try to teach them something. But you're not coming from a place of attachment to your reputation. Does that make sense? Am I kind of making the distinction? Okay. So for the time being, as long as we have ignorance, that even our states of mind like love, which are not incorrect, but they are contaminated by the ignorance, the most it can result in are positive experiences within samsara. Until you cut the root of samsara, all our positive actions are still contaminated with ignorance and can only result in positive results within samsara. So this is why it becomes important, I think we talked about that, what else? To become disenchanted with samsara, in addition to realizing how things exist. This means overcoming enchantment with samsara means loving the good stuff.
Wait. The overcoming is loving the good stuff?
Overcoming loving the good stuff.
Overcoming loving the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if we didn't know we were suffering, I wouldn't try to.
It's more than that. That's part of it. But starting to understand that anything that we consider positive in samsara is still the nature of suffering. And this is really hard. This you have to do a lot of thinking about.
Could you just say that one more time?
Maybe. Not sure. In order, since even our positive actions of body, speech, and mind can only, the best result you can get is still a positive condition in samsara, we need to start understanding that the good stuff that we say is good stuff in samsara is actually in the nature of suffering. That's a paraphrase, but okay.
I kind of think of that like a stick. If I got a stick this way, here's the happiness and the sadness. I want to just hold on to the happiness because it feels good. I still have the sadness over here. So I'm still holding on to eventually, what's going to turn around and make me suffer anyway. And I just drop it, and I don't have to do either one of those.
It's hard to really understand this continuum, that really it's all suffering. So there are 3 types of suffering in samsara. So we're going to assume no one's taken any Buddhism before, and we're going to go through it. Okay? So, suffering of suffering, which is the suffering we all recognize. That's the suffering of mental and physical pain. Okay? Everybody good with that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the easy one.
Suffering of change. This is what we label pleasure. So, Darius, you've got a great look on your face. So, okay. So what do we mean by that? Suffering of change.
When something feels good, you don't want it to change.
That's part of it. But it will change, won't
Yeah,
it?
regardless.
It's impermanent.
Yeah.
So anything that we like will end. So our loved ones die.
Like attachment, I guess.
Attachment doesn't end unless we make it end.
But
all the things, all the objects of our attachment.
But because we're like we get attached or we are attached, the change.
Well, because we like it and grasp at it as existing in a way that it actually doesn't exist, then we want it to last forever when it cannot.
Right.
So we're setting ourselves up for suffering. But it even goes beyond that. Okay? So this is when you start to look at how pleasure, when you look deeply at it, is actually the end of some suffering state. So, like for me, say you're hot, okay? And then I walk into a cool room, and I go, ah. So what's happened there?
The heat has stopped.
The heat has stopped
You're experiencing pleasure
Pleasure
from
from the-
something.
from the
that
heat
caused
stopping.
Temporary.
So what happens after about 20 minutes?
Cold.
It's cold. And so I walk out in the sunshine and go, ah.
Right.
Okay. What is that?
Same thing reversed.
Yeah, it's the stopping of cold. So you're hungry. Same thing.
Yeah.
All of our sensory desires all our sensory pleasures are actually a reflection of wanting something to end. We don't generally walk, we have the, Thich Nhat Hanh likes to talk about the joy of no toothache.
Right.
You know? And we call the joy of no toothache that relief. So it's really a moment of relief. And we're chasing them all the time. I'm bored. Let's change channels.
Right.
You know, I'm bored. Let's go shopping.
So we're just like addicted to everything, essentially.
Well, because we're addicted, we think that the only possible pleasure is meeting one of these sensory desires.
So it seems like a correct state of mind would be that not necessarily to the point of preoccupation, but say your toothache goes away, you say, your toothache ended. That doesn't mean that that's the end of all of my physical pain until I die or until this life ends.
Or that yeah, it's just the way it is in
Right.
this moment.
Right. That's
So when
toothache.
you have a toothache, what do you have to do?
You have to say, well, that will end too. The ache will end.
Well, that's how you can use it, the fact of impermanence, to help. It's just toothache.
Right.
It's not, I have to stop this toothache, or, I'll shoot myself.
Right.
It's just accepting, it's just experiencing what is. It doesn't mean you don't go to the dentist.
Right, because physically it feels like a toothache.
It physically is a toothache.
Sensation.
Because all a toothache is a signal from your brain saying something's wrong with your tooth.
Right.
It needs fixing.
Right. So you just go fix the tooth.
Yep.
And
If you can remedy it, you go fix it. If you can't remedy it,
There's no reason to suffer over it.
yeah.
And how does that apply then, losing a loved one, a parent, for example?
Same way. They're not here now. So you rejoice in all the time you had with them. Hopefully you enjoyed all the time you had with them. Because one of the main sources of grief is regret. It's that, oh, I never said this. Oh, I wish I had done this more. I da-da-da-da-da-da. Now, when we're in samsara, it's a loss. But it's only in relation to us. They'll be your parent again. You'll be their parent again, because our existence doesn't cease at the time of death. It's just this storyline. So this is a very big idea. It takes a lot of thought to see what the consequences are of thinking about things like rebirth. So in this life, they were your parent. So you can think about, they're on their next adventure. When they're dying, you hope that you help create conditions for them to have a very peaceful mind at the time of death, so that they create the that's a good condition for a good rebirth. But this grasping at wishing that they were here now is just creating suffering for yourself, because that's not possible. So this is how we create suffering from a difficult situation. We just, and it doesn't mean we should feel bad that we grieve, but we need to recognize what's going on. Is that part of the grief is this belief that they will always exist. They will always be in our life, and we ran out of time. So that's where the regret comes in, where we actually start thinking about, if only. And so that's another way of adding suffering onto what's already difficult. I was laughing today. I was in an exercise class with, my friends, the 80-year-olds, who are all doing better than I am on, whatever. But so on the soundtrack that the instructor uses often has music that would appeal to 80-year-olds, which is what? My parents' music. which brings up my dad. I hear all these songs that I can just picture him, happiness food, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I really miss him when that happens. And then I just kind of chuckle that instead of just enjoying that memory, that I have to throw in there, you know, this idea of wouldn't it be nicer if he was here? Because that's what we're doing. It's like we're not just enjoying the experience, we are grasping after it and wanting it to, you know, to be different than what it is. That's suffering.
So you are allowed to enjoy, so if something brings back a positive memory of someone you love,
Mm-hmm.
you are allowed to enjoy that. It's not.
Well, first of all, allow is just not even in the game.
Well, I know, I can't think of the right word, but.
Yeah. Enjoyment is not the problem.
Okay.
Pain is not the problem.
Okay.
It's the mind that grasps at things as if they exist in a way they do not. It's wanting to change reality. We argue with reality constantly.
Got it.
The clinging
that-
and rejecting.
Well, and that reinforces our ignorance, which is just keeping us stuck in samsara.
So nostalgia is suffering.
Depending on how you know, it's fine to sit there and just, you know, remember things. It's not so fine when you're wishing it was still like that.
Or that you can go back and change it.
Or you could go back and change it. That's, yes. That's where guilt seems to be, you know, that's sort of the difference between regret and guilt. You know, it might not be in our dictionary, but in, you know, when Buddhism uses the word regret, it's just talking about this taking responsibility for an action that you realize was harmful, and wanting to try not to do it again. You know? Whereas guilt is this somehow, you know, like you were a terrible son, you know, and da 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 da. You know, that's going too far. And also wanting to erase it. What is that desire to want to erase past actions?
I'd say that's pretty self-serving and it's egocentric because,
It's pride.
you know, yeah.
I don't want to be known as the person who ever did such a thing. You know? I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, obviously, we also can have very strong regret where we just are really, every time we think of the action, we are sad that we harm someone in that way. That's different than that kind of desire to just hide it or erase it, you know, as if you couldn't possibly be a person who would do such a thing.
But you are.
But you did.
Yeah.
So it's, again, arguing with reality. You know? Okay, so, but the most important type of suffering, in terms of trying to be liberated from samsara, is the last type of suffering, which Lama Zopa Rinpoche likes to call the pervasive suffering of compounded action. I also saw him say it a different way. Sometimes it's called all pervasive suffering, or the suffering of conditioning, you know.
Making it worse.
I know, it's really tricky. So this is what we need to renounce in order to be liberated, is this suffering of compounded action. Okay.
So what is that? Is
Yeah.
that on your next screen? Am I jumping
Maybe.
ahead?
Is it
Okay.
really a combination of the first two sufferings? The first
If you
two
don't
sufferings, and
have,
this is
well,
the
if you
third.
didn't have, the third one is actually why you have the other two.
Okay.
Okay? So it's referring to the nature of our aggregates. What are our aggregates?
Mind objects, form, consciousness, and what am I forgetting?
Nope, that's not it. Okay, if in very simple words, it's body and mind. Okay? The 5 aggregates are, now I'm going to forget, form, which is the body. And this is true of all phenomena. You know, anything that's like this, that's the form aggregate. But when we're talking about us, it's our body. Then there's feeling, which is the mind that experiences, oh, I think I've got these in here. maybe not. Maybe I thought about putting them in here. Okay. Discrimination, which is the mind that sometimes it's translated as recognition. It's the mind that is able to go this, that, it's able to distinguish between objects. Okay. Then non-associated composites. Some of these words are just terrible. I've never seen a good one though. They're all long. Basically, that is all states of mind that aren't feeling. Intention's in this one. Discrimination and contact, I guess. Contact is the state of mind where the object, a preceding moment of consciousness, and why is it? I should not think in terms of lists, because then I can't remember the list. The three, we'll get to this one though, so. All right. And then then we have the primary mind, which is, we have states of mind, and then we also have, which are all awarenesses and consciousness, but we also have what's referred to as like primary consciousness, sort of like it's horrible because this is a non-physical thing, our consciousness, but it's hard not to come up with analogies, it's like the hand, and then our states of mind are the fingers. There are all types of awareness, but the primary consciousness is our ability to have states of mind.
It's like the core almost.
Well, it's the clear and knowing. It's the capacity to know.
Is that the fifth aggregate, by the way?
Yeah.
Primary mind.
Yep. What these all share is they are caused by our karma and afflictions or delusions. So we have these 5 aggregates because we have not been liberated. So they're contaminated because they're the result of our contaminated actions. So say you're, a great bodhisattva and you become enlightened. You will not have created the cause for another rebirth. And in that moment of enlightenment, you no longer have a body like ours that's contaminated, it's a body of light. Now, we'll see it, if ordinary beings see a Buddha, it looks like just a person. We can't tell that they're a Buddha. But Bodhisattva sees a Buddha, they can see what's called the Sambhogakaya, which is the way that like Tara is, in the silks and, all this kind of stuff. Whereas Shakyamuni Buddha is often portrayed as a monk, like a human being, monk. But those are for our sake. Being able to see Shakyamuni Buddha and, Bodhisattvas being able to see white Tara like that is for our sake. That's what the form body of a Buddha is for, is to help us, But the mind of a Buddha, all it needs is this subtle energy. The mind and body are sort of inseparable, but we need this very gross physical body. An enlightened mind does not. It manifests these other types of bodies for the sake of sentient beings in order to help them. I know, it's big. Okay. Why was I answering that question? Oh, so unlike the Buddha, an unenlightened mind is creating, is continuing with its contaminated actions in body, speech, and mind. So at the time of death, one of those seeds will ripen and you will be born in your next body. And again, it will be a contaminated body because it's been caused by contaminated actions. they also don't die. The body might, the body might manifest, it should look to us as if it's dying. That's one of the 12 deeds of a Buddha, of a super emanation body like Shakyamuni Buddha. But the mind does not cease, you know, it just has nothing to do, that's just because of us. You know, so we also, our mind never ceases either. The difference between our mind and Shakyamuni Buddha's mind, which is, there are many reasons, but the one relevant to this context is that we're trapped in this state that is the nature of suffering. And an enlightened being is not. A liberated being is not. So even before you're enlightened, you're liberated from samsara. Yep.
So does that mean they're never reborn in human form or any form?
They just they can choose how they're born. So if they want to help, you know, other sentient beings, then they're born like we are, you know, but they don't, and they can actually, as you progress along the bodhisattva levels, after you've realized emptiness, you are no longer bound by our experience of physicality, and they can start to emanate bodies. You know, so like on the first ground, they can emanate 100 bodhisattvas of themselves to go do things, and then at the next one, it's like 100,000. Buddhas can emanate as many bodies as they wish. You can also emanate as a computer, as a bridge. They are not bound by our experience like we are in this physical state of samsara. They're free from that. So this, again, this is a huge view. You know, it's not just talking in terms of the idea that the way we experience this universe is the way it is. No, it's reflecting our karma. So we have pollution because we created the cause for that. I know it's almost too big of a topic for nighttime, isn't it? It's like, what? Say that again? So remember, this is huge, you know, and you don't need to like buy into this to benefit from the teachings on the mind, from the teachings on transforming your habits, all that kind of thing. This is a slow process.
We're not going to be completed by tonight?
No.
Oh, darn.
I so wish it.
Darn it.
So. The reason why it's called compounding, like all pervasive, whatever I said it was, pervasive, I can't remember this phrase. I learned it as all pervasive suffering, or suffering of conditioning. So conditioning or compounding, maybe our light bulb's about to go out.
Light show.
Yeah.
I
Is
really believe now in karma, and your karma with
technology.
it's like
You should see Liberation Prison Project.
it's like
It is so hard to help prisoners. I mean, everything you try to do runs into so many obstacles. It's incredible. I did all these things of putting all these letters in, scanned them all into the system for Liberation Prison Project. And of course, you know, like 4 hours worth of work, the next day you come, it's gone. Just not there on the computer, you know. It happened all the time. Unbelievable. All right. So what this idea of compounding or conditioning, this is all getting at the fact that it's producing something. You know, so our actions produce results. And our all-pervasive suffering is the result of our previous actions. And in this life, we're creating the causes for our, you know, future lives. And this just repeats itself. Now, we can purify seeds that have not ripened. And that will benefit us. And this is what you do in the meantime. Before, you know, when you realize emptiness, you're basically purifying all your karma all at once. You know? So they're having a work party, I think.
I think they're moving in.
Oh, is that what it is?
Stuff all night.
So, so you can purify your negative actions. If you dedicate, at the end of a positive action, then you're protecting your positive actions from harm for later states of mind like anger, which can destroy your roots of virtue. But so we just are repeating this constantly. We're thinking, speaking, and doing. Yep.
So, say one of your seeds is obsession of any kind. You're obsessed over shoes, you're obsessed over whatever it is. How do you purify that seed so that it doesn't ripen?
Well, you have to be willing to give it up. Okay, so that's, so when you have to, so to purify, this is where you have to apply the 4 opponent powers. Didn't we discuss that recently?
2 weeks ago.
Renunciate.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we repeated it for whatever class that was. I've already lost. What was that
It
class?
was like 2 weeks ago on a Thursday.
Yeah.
Forget about
I
that.
know.
Yeah.
Creating
Establishing a daily practice, because this is why it's a daily practice, so you can clean up your actions of that day, So, so you need regret. So if you're obsessive of something, you need to recognize the harm.
Right.
So what kind of harm does obsession cause?
Various kinds.
Huh?
A lot of different kinds.
Yeah, and you have to look at that.
Yeah.
You have to recognize, oh, I keep depleting my money, so I can never do whatever it was not able to use it for a different purpose. That you will, that it keeps me distracted from, I don't know. It's like, say you're taking a walk with your partner at the mall, but you keep looking in the store windows and getting distracted. So so you don't hear anything your partner's saying. If you're obsessed with the latest gadget, then you're going to debt for it. Those kinds of things. So these, you have to look at what the harm is. And one of the biggest harms for obsessions is it feeds craving. It just feeds craving. So you're harming yourself, your mind of craving, by constantly thinking, I gotta have this. If it's a thing. If you're obsessed over, there are things that we know, our obsessions can lead to mental disorders like obsessive compulsive disorder in a future life, where you're born with, a condition that, where you can, you have to really work hard to manage your obsessive thoughts or compulsive thoughts. You kind of you're so out of control that you've, created the cause to have this condition from at birth or whatever, if it's a genetic condition, whatever they find out it is. So these are this is the way our experience is reflecting our past actions. So you have to recognize what's the benefit of giving this up, and that might help you recognize what the harm is of staying this way, and then you can have that regret, because it needs to be a genuine mind of regret. And then you need to do a remedy. So you could do Vajrasattva, or depending on what kind of obsession is, you can match something up with that. But then you have to resolve to not do it again for a certain length of time. And you don't want to lie, so you want to try to be as realistic as possible. Yeah.
Been, various degrees of obsessions and various negativities depending upon what kind of obsession you have. Shoes is one thing, or God forbid, like gun collecting, or Jim Beam. That's a whole different obsession.
They're obsessions, they're addictions, they're all sorts of things. So you just want to look at your behavior and your attitudes of mind and see where the harm is. And one thing that, if you want to get liberated, all of our idle obsessions, this is where this idea of trying to understand that everything in samsara is the nature of suffering. So when you have renunciation, you won't have any obsessions. Because, you know, you won't fall for what your current obsessions, you know, are telling you, you know, what your state of your belief system is, that this is where happiness is, or this is where control is, or this is where whatever, you know. So this gets back to this all-pervasive suffering of conditioning, or whatever. We'll have 17 names for it by the end. So, you know, but it's this, you know, our bodies are temporary. They'll die. They can get very sick. They're easily harmed. You know, all of this stuff. That's part of the nature of this the form aggregate. The contaminated form aggregate is, you know, it's, you know, it might be what we consider a great machine, but you know, it fails, it hurts, all of that stuff. Our mind, because we have self-cherishing and grasping at the eye, you know, we have all these states of mind that are nothing but suffering. You know? And then when we start to really look, we can see that all the craving states of mind, all of those things are suffering. You know, our whole seeking happiness in this kind of existence is suffering. Trying to escape suffering in this type of existence is futile fatigue. So, yep, go for it.
I remember 3 of the 4 opponent powers. I couldn't remember the 4. Renunciation, regret,
refuge, or reliance. Like reliance on the teachings.
Refuge or reliance.
Yeah. I learned it as reliance, but I've seen it as refuge. Which you're doing with the you're going, yes, I understand that this was not skillful, and I want to, in the teachings say, oh, you really need to purify actions that are similar to that, you know, and you want to purify. So what you do is, you've already done the action, right? So you can't undo the action, but you can prevent it from ripening in the future. So that's what purifying that seed. And then you always throw in any other action I've ever done in whatever life that's similar to this one, you know. Now, the strength of the purification depends on the strength of our mind. So like bodhisattvas are much better at purifying than we are, you know, because they have a much stronger mind. They've been able to achieve uncontrived bodhicitta. You know, that's a very powerful mind. But the only way to develop that kind of strength of mind is to start now where we are. You know, because you get better at it. You know, as Rinpoche says, you know, if you really don't want to spend your rest of your life purifying, you might want to change your actions of body, speech, and mind. So then you rejoice about all the things you got right today. Or sort of right, or went into the sort of the right direction. So. So this repetitive thing is the force of habit energy, how we just, certain conditions arise, and it's just, you can just feel yourself wanting to do, get mad, get impatient, be greedy, I don't know, say something sarcastic, you can just feel it, That is our habit energy. And since most of the time we just go with it, we don't actually look, is what I'm doing skillful or not? It's like when you plow through your day, and you don't give one thought to the people you love, or, you just focused on getting these chores done, That's habit energy, You know, maybe you'll be a worker bee in the next life.
Right. And it's so funny because sometimes you have people who will reach out to you, like speaking for myself, during the day, and my thought is, I'm trying to work. Like, stop writing me. And that's the universe, whatever it is, saying, show appreciation for this friend.
Well, it's, because it's just, you have to really look and say, is that what you want?
Right.
You know? And you might be able to say, yes, I need to get work done. And some people just always stop by the cubicle or something and start talking, and I can't get my work done.
Right.
It's not that wanting to get your work done is the nature of, you know, wrongness or something. It's just that, you know, you want to make a choice. You want to be the one choosing, is this right for my life or not right for my life? And if you just plow with your energy, you know, habit energy, you're not making a choice. You're just following your habit energy.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You know, so that's, you know, that's where why you want to check up and notice what's going on in your mind. You know, so it takes, you know, it does. I mean, when you're first starting the Dharma, you know, and trying to develop this awareness of what's going on in, you know, in your mind and what your motivation is, and, you know, what were you thinking and all those things, you've got to be preoccupied with reminding yourself to notice what's going on in your mind. But it just takes some practice. It's not like you have to, for the rest of, you know, time, you know, if you practice, you'll get better at it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I sort of did some things last week that I couldn't remember, you know, because I didn't have my PowerPoint ready. So we know afflictions, kleshas, disturbing states of mind, negativities, delusions. These are all different words, you know, for the states of mind that arise from ignorance, and, you know, including ignorance. The 6 root afflictions are attachment, anger, pride, ignorance, doubt, and afflicted view. So they're trying to just condense it down. So they say there are 51 mental factors, but those are really only the 51 mental factors you have to concern yourself when you're trying to work on your mind and get out of samsara. They assume, you know, there are countless mental states of mind. These 6 root afflictions are the, you know, most of our afflictions fall under one of these categories, you know, so we know what attachment is. We've discussed that, right? It's described like oil that gets into a cloth, that when it's there, it is really difficult to remove. You know, so it's hard to get over attachment. So they call it clinging. It's just like really difficult. Hatred, or aversion, but it's really hatred. It's this mind that is exaggerating the negativities of something to the point where you really want to harm whatever object of it. So it's more than being just extremely upset, you know, you've had it. Although being extremely upset leads to this. So you want to check your mind much sooner than that. And then I really think low self-esteem, it's often referred to as pride. It's sort of like what pride is to attachment, low self-esteem is to aversion, you know? It perceives the self of one's own continuum as unattractive or negative, exaggerates those negative qualities, and becomes antagonistic towards it, wishing to harm the self. You know, this is like, well, I'm not going to exercise. I'm just going to go eat the whole chocolate cake because I'm worthless, I'm useless, I'm blah, 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 you know, all that stuff. Now, pride is looking at yourself. It's attachment to yourself and exaggerating your good qualities. And using them as reasons to look down on others. So that's a real important part of this, is we're not talking about confidence. We're talking about this attitude of superiority. I love the definition of it in the Tibetan. It's a puffing up of the mind. So it's insubstantial. It's not grounded in anything. So that's also why it's different from confidence. We do have skills. We are good at them. That's why we call them skills. It's so the Buddha said pride's the last disturbing state of mind we let go of. We're really into reputation. It's sort of like, okay, you can just picture losing everything, and then but people respect me or something. And then if you lose that, oh no, it's often a topic of movies. So anyway, so there's so many that they talk about: excessive pride, pride beyond pride, pride of thinking I, pride of conceit, pride of slight inferiority, and wrongful pride. So this means that so excessive pride means that you feel superior to those who are equal to you. So say you have a skill and you just think, well, and you're all equal in that skill, but you actually think you're better than those who are equal to you. Pride beyond pride is when you feel that you are better at something than someone who's actually better at it than you are. Okay? The pride of thinking I. This is that whole thing of holding, self-grasping at the I, when someone insults you and you kind of go, not me. How dare you think I would do such a thing? And then pride of conceit is thinking that you've attained something that you haven't, like a spiritual attainment that you don't have. Pride of slight inferiority is thinking that you are just a little lower than others who are actually vastly ahead of you in whatever skill you're talking about. Wrongful pride is thinking, this was the one that's actually about spiritual qualities, that you have attained transcendental qualities, like clairvoyance or something, when actually you're on the wrong path. So it's all wrong. There's nothing, you've got the wrong idea entirely. What is pride? Why can you imagine that pride is an obstacle to, say, liberation?
You have unrealistic view of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it's impossible to really develop mind.
Yeah, you won't listen because you've already accomplished something. It's kind of like the upside down pot. Nothing can get in because you've already decided you already know. And it's a real, it gets in the way of learning anything new. It gets in the way of really having correct self-assessment because you're wrong. You already have wrong self-assessment. So that awareness, trying to pay attention to what's in your mind, you're distorting everything. So you make the information you get fit your distorted view.
In fact, can really hurt people.
Yes.
Because you think you are you have some skills or and you don't.
Exactly.
And you blind others.
Yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
Being that you do and that you cannot deliver.
That's right, because you're wrong about your abilities, And then, of course, and then when people are arrogant, when they go to the point of arrogance,
Right.
They are actually doing behavior that is trying to get others to feel bad about themselves. They're trying to prove their superiority. And we do a lot of harm in those conditions. But like you said, one of the worst is the fact that you act as if, or you think you know how to do something that you don't know how to do. Can you imagine a doctor having a false sense of their skills? I can't imagine them actually.
Yeah, it's happened.
But usually it's just the bedside manner, not really, So, I mean, this is, you know, we don't want a surgeon who's wrong about their ability to do the surgery. No. So confidence is not the problem. It's when you're wrong about you know, when you're puffing up your mind, you know. So, okay, so ignorance, when we're talking about the 6 root afflictions, is actually, ignorance like about the teachings, holding the law of cause and effect don't. So it's gotten bigger now. So it's not just about not understanding how things exist, but now you also, you know, you don't believe in past and future lives. You don't believe in the law of cause and effect. So this ignorance that is the ignorance of the 6 root afflictions is the unknowing of the Buddhist teachings, basically. Doubt. Doubt is a 2-pointed mind. So it's you know, basically it's an undecided mind that keeps wavering, you know, between yes and no, I guess. So you're not sure about law of cause and effect. You know, some days, you know, you feel like, yeah, that's probably true, and other times no, I don't think that's true. You know, you're kind of in the middle.
How do you uproot this root of affliction?
So this one is, okay, so one of the things that they say, you know, to go from that, how we get out of samsara and our afflictions is we kind of start with wrong view. We have a wrong consciousness. We're wrong about something, okay? And then we explore that, and then we start having doubt. And at first we have doubt tending away from the fact, because we still strongly hold this belief, you know, this wrong view that we have. But then said we keep studying, we keep meditating, we keep reflecting, we keep, you know, analyzing, and then we move up to sort of equal doubt. But if we stop there, you know, we won't make progress. So then you have to keep studying, keep learning, keep, you know, investigating, so you can get to doubt tending towards the fact. And then say, like a lot of us, after a couple of years of studying Buddhism, and for sticking with it, we kind of, yeah, I accept that. Now we've moved to correctly assuming consciousness. So it's an assumption still. We haven't reached the level of a realization of really knowing something is correct or not. But we assume it's correct. You know, we have a pretty strong confidence. This can often is from, you know, having confidence in our teachers or having, you know, whatever. But eventually, that correctly assuming consciousness, if you keep meditating, reflecting, and looking at experience, putting into practice the teachings, blah, 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 will lead you to a valid cognition that's conceptual, an inferential valid cognition, you know? And then eventually that will propel you to, you know, an inferential valid cognition, which means you're thinking about it, you know, and you've settled, is unshakable. You know, no matter what anybody says, you've had this realization, you know it's true. That's the mind that is strong enough to propel you to a realization of emptiness, a direct realization, where you don't have to think about it anymore, you actually experience the absence of inherent existence. Yes, yes.
It'd be more direct to have an experiential cognition as opposed to an inferential cognition.
Yes, but you can't have one without the other.
You can't have one without the inference to begin with.
Yeah, you have to know what to think about. This is why they often say, particularly in this tradition, you have to study, because if you don't study, you don't have anything to meditate on. You know, if you're not reflecting on the teachings and then contemplate, yeah.
Well, I would say I don't understand why it's called affliction, since doubt, at least at the beginning, is a good thing, so you can explore the issue. If you didn't have doubt, and
yeah, you wouldn't.
Especially in Buddhism, which is very analytical, then you know, you would be like a sheep.
It is I
Just
mean,
like a kind of listening and not reflecting.
that's
on
why they
it
say
and
this is
not
where you
thinking.
start, Magda. You start with a wrong thing, and then you develop doubt. That's an improvement.
All right.
It's an affliction because it's contaminated with ignorance. Even a valid cognition of, you know, inferential cognition of emptiness is still contaminated with ignorance. It's still a contaminated mind in samsara. That's all the only reason these are, we're not talking about whether it's a positive or negative state of mind. We're talking about whether it's contaminated with ignorance.
Because doubt can still make you suffer.
Two pointed doubt where you don't ever decide. You know, like one of the students when I was in Australia was asking the guy, she goes, well, how do we really know anything exists or not? And he just goes, you have to decide. Just decide, you know? So you kind of make this assumption, okay, I'm going to assume things exist and then explore. And so if someone's stuck in this equal doubt where they can't seem to just choose one and explore from that, they'll get stuck there. That's why this one's pointed out. But it's certainly not worse than a wrong.
I would think that more studying the issue and more meditation, more experimentation on yourself would finally, it's like.
Yeah, that's what I
doing the
said.
research at
That's what I said.
university, same, you
That's
know.
exactly what I said, Magna. That if you stop studying,
Okay.
if you stop doing, you can't make progress. But also, if you can't keep your mind open enough to even really listen to the teachings, then you might get stuck there. You know? Or some people just turn away. Like say like you believe in a creator God, and you just, and you've decided that, you are not going to give up your faith in a creator God. So you meet the teachings that there is no creator God, and you decide, no, that's wrong. And that's fine. I mean, but it's not, so that is, you're not going to investigate further on that issue.
Something already has to be in your, let's say, especially for Western people, who, let's say, most of us were not born in a Buddhist family.
Right.
There must be something already in the mind to make you curious, because you kind of jump over your often religion that I was brought up Catholic, and yet at 12 I decided.
Yep. No, that's right.
It doesn't go with me
The karmic,
somehow, the philosophy,
Yeah.
So something has to start you.
It's a past life.
Right.
Yeah, and this is slow. That's right.
So.
That's why you run with it. When you meet good conditions, you try to not waste your time and cultivate. We won't always meet the teachings. We want to try to create the cause to meet the teachings.
But you don't need doubt to be curious. You can be curious without doubt.
Yeah. Absolutely. But they really are talking about this middle state of mind. Where it's, when you like you said, when you first have doubt, that's a positive thing, because now you're going to explore. You're going to have a question about your view, and you're going to look at, you're going to investigate. But you're probably going to keep leaning towards what you already believed, for a while, and then, whatever. Other times it may be that you hear something, go, yes, boy, finally, somebody's making sense to me. Because so the wrong view wasn't actually something you held. It's maybe what your culture, your society holds. Yeah.
And aren't you saying that this affliction is not questioning, rather it's wavering between two thoughts and
things.
never deciding?
Right. That's where you get stuck. Yeah.
I think sometimes in our, the fact that a lot of the stuff comes from Sanskrit and Pali, we have a word that we assign to it in English that just doesn't suffice. Like the word doubt, she says like a deep doubt stuck between I don't know. It's not the doubting of like, I'm not sure.
No, it's you're stuck in the middle where you're just constantly,
Real doubt.
Like when you're trying to make a decision and you really want the perfect decision,
It just
And
ain't
so
there.
you don't act
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, you want only the perfect decision, and so you just don't act. That's where you get stuck. You know, it's that kind of mind.
But I think, you know, in Buddhism study, we often over the years go through various doubts and crises.
Absolutely.
And the thing is to resolve it. Now,
Right.
the problem probably is if somebody has doubts and completely leaves and,
Right.
okay, I'm fed up with all
Doubt
this
is part of the
bullshit.
investigative
Yeah.
process, you know.
Otherwise,
Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning, that you start with wrong view, then you have doubt, and that's a step up, because now you're exploring, and then you work from there to doubt tending away from the wrong view, and then with more study, reflection, and meditation, you achieve correctly assuming consciousness. And that's a particular type. The reason why they call it a correct assumption is that actually you don't really have good reasoning yet. you know, it can be as simple as because the Buddha said so. Well, that's not strong enough to become unshakable, you know. So anyway, that's not the subject of this DB. Come to mind and its potential, we'll discuss that. So, but yeah, you're right. Okay, so we're out of time. Let me just look at afflicted view, because it's the last one. There are 5 afflicted views, and they're all, the first one though, the first afflicted view is the ignorance that is the root of samsara. You know how I said ignorance that is the ignorance of the 6 afflictions is ignorance of things like karma, past and future lives. So the ignorance that is the root of samsara, that specific ignorance of how phenomena, that phenomena are not inherently existent, thinking that phenomena are inherently existent, is the first afflicted view of the 5 views. So the 6 root affliction, there are 5 of them. Just because they, I'm sure it's because they want to annoy me. But there are all these things like holding a view that's wrong as supreme. Like, if I make lots of animal sacrifice, then the gods will put favor on me or something, or, I'm right, whatever it is, the Buddhist view of how things exist is, is the only view, it's like dogma. It's very interesting, this flashing screen. Okay, I wonder if it's just my connection. It seems like it's the bulb. I feel like I'm in a strobe light. Okay.
Let's go.
All right, so consider reading something.
are any of the readings in the library?
I emailed them to people, so if you were not here last week, I'll email it to you.
So
I need
this will go to us?
This won't. This is
Oh.
my work.
I
And-
got your emails.
And it had a file that had the teaching, the readings on it.
It said, I recommend this, and this reading.
Did you read the attachment? Open the
I
attachment.
read the attachment, and then there was this thing that said, recommend read this, and this, and I thought that was something else.
There's some
Two.
books they also recommend.
Yeah.
But I sent you 2 files
Yeah.
that have the readings actually in them.
It's
Yes.
3 files. I'm looking at the email.
3
now.
files, yes, 3 files.
3 files.
Yeah, but one's a meditation.
Oh yes. You would know what you sent.
Because I read my email. I know the world doesn't read their emails, but I read my email. Yeah, so 3 files. So one was a meditation that you could consider
okay.
looking at, and maybe even meditating on. One is one of the 3 teachings, and they're not very long.
Right.
And then if you happen to own Liberation in the Palm of your Hand, you can read the section in there. If you're a beginner, I don't really recommend it. It's because it's too much information. But, I read it, I don't know. Wish Fulfilling Golden Sun is Lama Zopa Rinpoche's kind of teaching on it. So it can sometimes be a bit, concerning, like you read it and feel like, ooh, I need to purify. He can cause panic sometimes, so try not to do that. You can read. We can hand these out to people if there are enough copies of them. That thing from Venerable Amy.
We didn't have any.
You didn't have any, or you did hand them out, or I don't understand what
No.
you're saying.
We didn't. You were gonna read it.
I did, yeah. I read it partly because I wanted to see, well, yeah, it has some differences in jargon. But, you know.
So we covered, looks like we covered 3 of the afflicted views. We're gonna do the others next week.
I'll briefly go through them. It's not very, I'll briefly go through them.
Okay.
But the main one is the ignorance.
Okay.
That is the root of samsara. As opposed to the ignorance that is not understanding karma. I just love it. That's why I often refer to the root of samsara as fundamental confusion. Because it's a little easier to be clear about what that is. But you know what I'm referring to. But we're going to start looking at the 12 links, which are how we create the cause and how, what the, you know, all the little steps to being reborn. Okay? And the wheel of life is a tanka, it's a painting of the 12 links, which is usually on the wall by the entrance of Dharma centers, because it's helping you have renunciation. Okay. So think about if like the, I don't know how, am I just supposed to unplug this, you think?
Yeah, it's fine.
Um,
Then after the source is on, there's a power button underneath, but it'll turn off if it's not feeding. There you go.
do I have to hit it again? Good night.